What is good, everyone? How are you guys doing? I hope you guys are having an absolutely awesome day today. Welcome back to J-Boo's Plants and Bonsai. As winter is approaching, or maybe by the time you watch this video it will already be winter, I thought it would be a good idea to make a video on how to properly care for our plants during the colder months. We have 4 topics to discuss, and I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time, so let's get right into the video. The first thing we're going to talk about is going to be temperature. And so from my understanding, it's a relatively well-known fact that during winter, the temperature tends to drop. And depending on where you live, unless you just live in like a perfect climate, you'll probably need to take into consideration whether your plants, especially outdoor plants, are going to be able to withstand the temperature change. And so you may be wondering, well, how cold is going to be too cold? It's kind of hard to put an exact number on it just because different plants have different limits. But generally speaking, around the 45 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit range is typically when I notice some plants begin to get affected from the colder temperature change. But again, that's only some plants. A good majority of my plants are able to withstand a little bit colder temperatures. The lowest temperatures that I would consider safe is around 35 to 37 degrees Fahrenheit. But then again, that could be risky because a cold breeze could lower the temperature just a little bit to where it does affect the plants. So think about, can your plants survive the temperatures? And if they are affected, how badly will they be affected? Do you want to risk that? Things of that nature. And also look for the very first changes in your plants if they are affected. Usually the first thing that I notice is that leaves will begin to turn white. And so if that begins to happen, I just immediately bring it inside. So yeah, be proactive, reactive. Yeah. And that will kind of lead us into our next topic, which is going to be location as well as lighting. Like we were just talking about, not all plants are going to be able to survive the cold temperatures, and so I would highly recommend, if you can, moving plants inside. Ideally and hopefully it's not going to be nearly as cold inside as it's going to be outside, and that's just going to exponentially increase the chance of survival for your plants. If you do end up bringing plants inside, you'll want to make sure they get a sufficient amount of light, and you can do that by placing them either by a window, or if you don't have any space, you could also think about maybe introducing some artificial light. Something else that is very important to talk about when we're thinking about placement is going to be significant temperature changes within your house. For instance, while putting your plants near a window is a great option for getting a sufficient amount of light, if your window is open, a cold breeze could come through and potentially harm your plant, as well as if you place your plant near something that's hot, like a heater or something, that could also take a negative effect on your plant. So those are just some things to think about when you're thinking about placement. But maybe you don't have enough space and so you can't bring your plants inside, or whatever the case may be. Another option you could go for is either a little greenhouse or a frost blanket. Sometimes at the hardware store you can find a little greenhouse that you're able to build yourself. And it isn't the sturdiest or the nicest thing in the world, but it does exactly what it needs to. I've actually gotten one before, and over the winter it protected the plants very nicely, so that is a potential option. But if you're unable to get a greenhouse or you simply don't want one, our last option could be a frost blanket, which also works relatively well, and it's also budget friendly, so that's just a bonus on top of that. Naturally, if you're going to be keeping your plants outside over the winter, then lighting really shouldn't be an issue. Just make sure they don't stay in the shade all day, and it's really as simple as that. And so next, we are going to be moving on to watering as well as soil. First things first, we're going to want to cut down on our watering pretty drastically, and the reason being, with the colder temperatures comes a much slower rate at which our soil is going to be drying out. This is why root rot is such a big problem when it comes to winter time, because it's very common for people, including myself, to keep watering while the soil is still wet, which is obviously leading to root rot 100 out of 100 times. So when should you water? You should really only water your plants once it has completely dried out. This should mitigate the risk of developing root rot versus watering your plants when it still is containing a little bit of moisture. So you could set a fixed watering schedule, or you could just do what I do, which is checking my plant soil every few days, seeing if it's still moist, and if it is, I don't water it. Once it dries out, I give it water, simple as that. It mitigates the risk and it really helps. To check for soil's moisture, I really like to use a moisture gauge. I think it's the most effective way, but you could also use like a chopstick or something, dig it into the soil, and once you pull it out, if it's wet, then obviously your soil is still moist. Moving on. Not only are the colder temperatures going to determine how much you water, but it's also going to be highly dependent on what kind of soil mixture you have. So of course, if you have something that drains really fast, you'll be watering more often than something that retains a lot of moisture. And you really have to be mindful with the mixtures that do retain a lot of moisture, because those are the ones that are going to be highly susceptible to root rot when it's colder, of course. And so the main takeaways are cut down on watering, be very mindful of what kind of soil mixtures you have, and also just remember, underwatering will always be better than overwatering at the end of the day. The last topic of discussion is going to be fertilizer. During the winter, for me, I don't find it super necessary to be heavily fertilizing just because my plants are going into dormancy. And since they're not growing, I don't want to risk giving them too much fertilizer or just fertilizing them too often and inevitably damaging them. That would be the last thing I want. And so unless your climate allows it, or maybe if you keep your plants inside and so they're just always growing, maybe relax on the fertilizer a little bit, but you could use some slow release fertilizers that aren't going to be too strong or powerful. Throughout the year, I always like to just cycle fertilizer sticks throughout my plants, and they're not powerful enough to damage them, and they also aren't, super weak, so they also do give a little bit of a boost, which is nice. So yeah, I would say that if you know your plants are going into dormancy, then fertilizing really isn't necessary as they're not going to be growing anyways. Instead, just wait until spring where you know they'll definitely be growing and the fertilizer will get a full use. But like I said, if you live in a good environment or you're able to control your plant's environment very well, then do whatever you feel is best. So yeah guys, that has been winter plant care. I hope you guys enjoyed, and most of all, I hope this video helped you guys in any sort of way, any shape or form. I hope it helped you guys. I'm sure there's stuff that I've probably missed, and so if you guys can think of anything, make sure to drop it in the comments and we can just have this video be like a domain for all the winter care information ever. But yeah, that has been winter plant care. Thank you all for stopping by. Thank you for watching the video. I hope it helped you guys. Let me know if it did or if it didn't. Let me know if there's something I could have done better. You guys hopefully know the deal by now. And thank you for anyone new stopping by. Welcome to Jabe's Plants and Bonsai. Hope to see you again. And yeah, guys, I love you all. You guys are awesome. Thank you all for your love. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.